My wife lied about a miscarriage while sleeping with her boss for months, so I gathered proof, waited for the right moment, and destroyed her perfect image forever. I'm a 33-year-old guy, and I thought my life with Sarah was perfect. We'd been married for 3 years, built a comfortable home together, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Sarah was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, funny, ambitious. She worked in marketing and loved her job. But when she told me she was pregnant, she cried in my arms like it was the happiest day of her life. I remember that moment so vividly. Her head against my chest, my hand shaking as I whispered, "We're going to be parents." After that, my world shifted. I started working longer hours, taking on extra projects, just to make sure she and the baby had everything they could ever need. I painted the spare room soft yellow, built a crib with my own hands, and read every dad-to-be book I could find. Sarah laughed at how obsessed I was, but I could see the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes sometimes. At first, I thought it was hormones, or maybe the stress of pregnancy. But she started taking more work trips, weekend conferences, late-night strategy meetings. Her phone, which used to sit face up on the counter, was suddenly glued to her hand. I'd catch her turning away when messages popped up. Once, I joked, "What, got a secret admirer?" She just rolled her eyes and said, "It's work stuff. Don't be paranoid." I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to believe her. I told myself every couple goes through weird phases during pregnancy, so I pushed it aside, focused on being supportive, and convinced myself she just needed space. Still, some nights, when she'd come home late smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, something deep in my gut whispered that something wasn't right. But I wasn't ready to listen to it yet. A few weeks later, everything shattered. I was at work when my phone rang. It was Sarah. Her voice was trembling, broken. "It's gone," she whispered. "The baby's gone." For a second, I couldn't even process the words. My knees buckled, and I had to sit down at my desk. "What do you mean gone?" I asked, my throat tight. She just kept repeating, "I lost it. I lost the baby." I left work immediately, barely remembering how I drove home. When I got there, she was curled up on the couch, her eyes red but strangely dry, like she'd already cried it all out. I knelt beside her, trying to hold her, but she stiffened slightly in my arms. She said it happened suddenly. Pain, bleeding, panic, and by the time she got to the hospital, it was over. I felt like someone had punched through my chest. I told her it wasn't her fault, that we'd try again, that we'd get through this together. But she just shook her head, whispering, "Please don't talk about it. I just want to forget." Over the next few days, she barely spoke to me. No follow-up appointments, no paperwork, no doctor's notes, nothing. Every time I asked, she'd snap, "I don't want to relive it, okay?" I thought maybe that was how she coped. I told myself grief looks different for everyone, but something about it felt off. Her phone buzzed more than usual, and when I glanced at it, she'd snatch it away. Once, I found a crumpled receipt from a restaurant across town, dated the same night she said she was in the hospital. When I asked about it, she said she stopped for food afterward. I wanted to believe her. I did believe her, because the alternative was too painful to even consider. But a quiet, uneasy thought began to take root in the back of my mind. What if she wasn't telling me the full story? The weeks after the miscarriage felt like walking through fog. Sarah barely looked at me anymore. She'd sit at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, her face lit by the screen, her dinner untouched. When I'd try to start a conversation, she'd mumble something about being tired or not ready to talk. I threw myself into work, telling myself she just needed time to heal. But the silence between us grew heavy. One night, I came home early, hoping to surprise her with her favorite takeout. Her car was in the driveway, but the house was empty. I called, no answer. I texted, nothing. Hours later, she walked in, startled to see me awake. "Where were you?" I asked gently. She hesitated, then said, "Work meeting ran late." Her voice was flat, rehearsed. I looked at her shoes, no office wear, just heels and perfume I didn't recognize. I wanted to ask more, but her eyes dared me to push. So I stayed quiet, pretending not to notice. At work, I started hearing small comments. A coworker mentioned seeing Sarah at a bar downtown, laughing with a man in a suit. Another said she seemed close with her boss during company events. I laughed it off, even defended her, but each rumor chipped away at the version of my wife I was clinging to. Nights became unbearable. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, remembering how she used to curl into me before sleep. Now she'd turn away, clutching her phone under the pillow. Once, I heard her whispering in the bathroom, her tone soft, almost flirtatious. When I asked, she said it was a client call. I wanted to believe her, but her distance felt like a wall closing in. And deep down, something inside me was starting to break. A quiet voice asking if the woman I married ever truly loved me at all. It was a Thursday night when the truth started to crawl out from under the surface. Sarah had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she took a shower. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. Trust was supposed to mean something. But that night, my eyes caught a glimpse of an unfamiliar name in her inbox. "Dinner plans?" the subject line read. My stomach twisted. I clicked it. Just one message, short, harmless on the surface, but the tone was too familiar. "Last night was amazing. Same place next week?" My hand shook. I heard the shower running upstairs and felt my heart hammering against my ribs. I closed the laptop and sat there, numb, as water dripped in the sink like a ticking clock. When she came down, towel around her hair, I forced my voice to sound calm. "Rough day at work?" I asked. "Yeah," she said quickly, avoiding my eyes. "I've got another late one tomorrow. The new campaign's been insane." Her phone buzzed, and she grabbed it immediately, turning her body slightly away. That's when I noticed something, a tiny detail that sent chills down my spine. Her phone wallpaper had changed. It used to be a photo of us at the beach. Now, it was plain black. The next morning, I checked her car before she left. There was a crumpled restaurant napkin in the passenger seat, same logo as the one from that suspicious email. I started connecting the dots, the perfume, the work trips, the lies. It all pointed to one thing, but I couldn't confront her yet. I needed to know for sure. I started taking mental notes of her excuses, logging times and dates. Every inconsistency deepened the pit in my stomach. Then one night, I noticed a hotel keycard tucked inside her purse, a logo from the same place she'd claimed to have a conference. I stood there in silence, staring at it, realizing I might be living with a stranger I no longer truly knew. The next day, I decided to stop guessing and start knowing. Sarah had another work trip scheduled, 2 nights away for a supposed client meeting in the next city over. She kissed me goodbye that morning, her eyes warm but distant, and said, "Don't wait up, I'll call you tonight." But I didn't plan on waiting. I drove to that city after work, parking near the hotel whose keycard I'd found in her purse. My hands were slick on the steering wheel, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. For 2 hours, I sat there, watching the entrance, telling myself I was insane, paranoid, cruel for even suspecting her. Then I saw her. Sarah stepped out of a taxi, wearing a red dress I'd never seen before. She looked radiant, too radiant for a business trip. And then, right behind her, came her boss. He placed a hand on her lower back as they walked inside together, laughing, touching. My wife and her mentor. I couldn't move. My chest caved in on itself, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Every memory we'd shared, the wedding vows, the pregnancy test, the nursery I built, it all flickered through my mind like scenes from someone else's life. I felt stupid, small, erased. I wanted to storm inside, scream, confront them, destroy everything. But something in me froze. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it, twist it, cry her way out like she always did. So instead, I took out my phone. My hands trembled as I zoomed in and snapped a few photos. Time, date, faces clear, evidence. Then I drove home in silence, tears blurring the road. I didn't tell a soul. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the empty space beside me and whispered to myself, "You'll get your truth, Sarah, but you'll never see it coming." 2 days later, I sat in my car outside my office, staring at the photos on my phone. Sarah with her boss, the hand on her back, the way she smiled at him, the same smile that used to be mine. My stomach turned every time I looked at them. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I needed to understand why. That's when fate handed me something unexpected. A co-worker, Jenna, knew someone who worked at Sarah's company. I didn't plan to involve anyone, but when Jenna mentioned Sarah's boss's name, something slipped out of me. A quiet, broken, "You know him?" She nodded. "Yeah, his wife's in my yoga class." "Why?" My pulse spiked. His wife? The man she was sleeping with was married, and the wife? Someone I'd met once at a company dinner. We'd even talked about starting families. My hands shook as I asked Jenna, "Can you give me her number?" I texted the boss's wife anonymously that night. Just one line. "You need to know what your husband and Sarah have been doing." I expected anger, denial, maybe nothing. But instead, she replied almost instantly, "I already suspected. Do you have proof?" We met the next day in a small cafe. She looked exhausted, like someone who'd been living half a truth for too long. I showed her the photos. She showed me messages, screenshots of Sarah bragging to her husband. "He believes anything I tell him. I could fake another pregnancy if I had to." That line nearly stopped my heart. Another pregnancy. And that's when it hit me. The miscarriage. It wasn't real. There had never been a baby. She'd lied to hide her affair. My entire reality twisted in one brutal instant. I walked out of that cafe numb, the world spinning around me. The woman I loved had faked life itself to cover her betrayal. And suddenly, the man who had spent years protecting her was done playing her fool. For days, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without feeling disgust. Every reflection was a reminder of how deeply I'd been played. I stopped eating, stopped answering calls from friends. I'd go to work, stare blankly at my screen, and then come home to a house that felt like a crime scene. Sarah moved through it like nothing was wrong, laughing on the phone, humming while cooking, wearing that same perfume that wasn't mine. She'd look at me sometimes with this strange pity, as if I was the one who'd failed her. "You've been distant lately," she said one night, setting her fork down. "Are you mad at me or something?" I stared at her, my chest tightening. "You lied about a baby, Sarah," I wanted to scream. But instead, I just said, "Work's been rough. I'm tired." She smiled faintly. "You should take a break. Maybe give me some space too. I need time to heal." That line broke me. She needed time to heal, from a miscarriage that never happened, from lies she invented, from betrayal she committed. That was the night I hit rock bottom. I went to the nursery, the one I'd painted yellow, the one with the crib I built, and sat on the floor, staring at the emptiness. I'd created that room for a life that never even existed. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't cry. I just sat there, motionless, feeling the weight of everything she'd taken from me. Trust, peace, dignity. For the first time in my life, I truly hated someone. But amid the wreckage, a new feeling started to grow, a quiet, burning clarity. I couldn't undo what she'd done, but I could control what happened next. She'd fooled me, humiliated me, broken me to my core. Now it was my turn to stop being her victim, and she wouldn't see it coming until it was far too late. From that night on, something inside me flipped. The man who had spent months doubting his instincts was gone. I became quiet, observant, strategic. I started planning, not out of rage, but out of precision. I knew if I exploded now, she'd twist the story like she always did, crying her way into sympathy. No, I'd wait. I'd let her destroy herself with her own lies. I began collecting everything. Every late-night text, every work trip, every receipt she forgot to hide. I backed up her photos from the cloud, searched old emails, and even pulled her deleted messages. Most were harmless. But buried deep, I found threads that turned my stomach. Flirty exchanges, hotel confirmations, and one message that sealed it all. He still thinks we lost the baby. I almost feel bad. I printed everything and kept it locked away at my office. My coworkers noticed a change in me, calmer, sharper. One even said, "You seem different lately." I smiled faintly and replied, "Just focusing on what matters." They didn't know that every night, when Sarah said she had late calls, I was quietly tracing her location through shared devices she didn't know I still had access to. The next discovery nearly made me sick. She wasn't just cheating. She was spending our money on their trips, charging hotel stays and gifts on our joint card, labeling them as business expenses. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was theft. But instead of confronting her, I stayed affectionate, brought her flowers, made her breakfast, even apologized for being distant. Watching her relax again, laughing over dinner, pretending she was still fooling me, it was the first time in months I felt control return to me. She thought she'd buried the truth under lies and fake tears, but what she didn't realize was that I wasn't chasing answers anymore. I was building her downfall, piece by piece, in silence. And when it came, it wouldn't just ruin her, it would expose everything she'd ever pretended to be. When Sarah's company announced their annual gala, it felt like fate handing me the perfect stage. It was her favorite event of the year. Fancy dresses, champagne, and endless chances to show off her picture-perfect life. She'd been nominated for Employee of the Year, thanks to her dedication and professionalism. The irony made me almost laugh. At dinner one night, she mentioned it casually. "You'll come with me, right?" she asked, adjusting her earring in the mirror. "It'll be a big night." I looked up from my coffee, forcing a soft smile. Wouldn't miss it for the world. She had no idea that by then, I'd already sent an anonymous package to her company's HR department. Inside were printed messages, receipts, hotel bookings, all neatly organized by date. Every work trip lined up perfectly with her boss's schedule. And for good measure, I included screenshots of her mocking their own policies in private chats. I also sent copies to the boss's wife, who, by now, had filed for divorce and was more than willing to help. She agreed to leak the final set of photos the same night as the gala. The week leading up to it, Sarah was glowing again. She bought a new red dress, spent hours picking jewelry, and told her friends, "This night's going to change everything for me." She wasn't wrong. The night of the event, the ballroom glittered with lights and applause. I stood by her side, smiling, hand in hand, every inch the proud husband. People congratulated her, praising her dedication to her work. I even heard someone whisper, "She's the kind of woman everyone admires." I raised my glass and nodded, pretending to agree, knowing that within hours, those same voices would turn to whispers of shock and disgust. Sarah thought this night would be her crowning moment. She didn't realize it was the stage for her very public fall from grace. The lights dimmed, and Sarah took the stage. She looked radiant, confident, graceful, like she'd finally achieved the life she always wanted people to envy. Her boss sat in the front row, smiling proudly. My jaw tightened as she stepped to the mic and began her speech. "I just want to thank everyone who believed in me," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "Especially my husband, who's been my rock through everything." She looked right at me, eyes glassy, that fake smile plastered on her face. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. But then, just as she finished her speech, a murmur rippled through the audience. The large projector behind her flickered, and suddenly, her smiling face was replaced by a series of screenshots, messages, photos, receipts. Her own words lit up the screen in perfect, damning clarity. "He still thinks we lost the baby. We'll celebrate at the hotel after the gala." Then photos of her and her boss holding hands outside that same hotel. The crowd gasped. Someone shouted, "What the hell is this?" Her boss jumped to his feet, stammering. Sarah froze, her microphone clattering to the floor. "Turn that off," she yelled, her voice cracking. But it was too late. The entire room had seen. The HR director stood up, her face pale. Within seconds, the boss's wife, who had been waiting near the back, walked straight to the front, tossed her wedding ring on the stage, and said coldly, "Congratulations, Sarah. You finally got the attention you wanted." Sarah's perfect world shattered in front of hundreds of people. The applause had turned into whispers, judgmental stares, phones recording every second. I stood up quietly, smoothing my suit jacket. When her eyes met mine, she looked desperate, pleading, but I felt nothing. No anger, no love, no regret, just closure. I leaned close enough for only her to hear. "You lied about a baby, Sarah. Now everyone knows what you really gave birth to, your own destruction." And then I walked away as security escorted her and her boss out of the building, the sound of chaos and whispers echoing behind me. The fallout was immediate. By morning, Sarah's face was all over social media, clips from the gala spreading like wildfire. The once admired career woman was now trending for all the wrong reasons. Her company released a statement within hours, announcing an internal investigation and the immediate suspension of both her and her boss. When I got home that night, she was already there. She sat on the floor of the living room, mascara streaked down her face, her phone buzzing nonstop. When she looked up, her voice cracked. "How could you do this to me?" I stood in the doorway, calm, steady. "You did it to yourself, Sarah. I just made sure the truth didn't stay buried." She shook her head, tears spilling. "I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you about the miscarriage, about everything." "Stop lying," I said sharply. "There was no miscarriage. There was never a baby." Her breath hitched. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The silence that followed was heavier than any screaming match could have been. After a few moments, she whispered, "Please, I don't have anyone else." I looked around at the house we'd built, the photos on the walls, the nursery that would never hold a child. For the first time, I felt nothing but relief. "That's not my problem anymore," I said quietly. "Pack your things. You have until tomorrow." She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. Her touch felt poisonous now. In the following days, she tried everything: texts, voicemails, even showing up at my work in tears. I never responded. Her boss's wife finalized her divorce and thanked me for giving her the proof she needed. Sarah, meanwhile, lost her job, her reputation, and every bit of sympathy she thought she could manipulate. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just signed the divorce papers, handed her half of what she hadn't already taken, and walked away. But even as I closed that chapter, I knew one thing wasn't over yet: the healing. Because betrayal that deep doesn't end with revenge. It lingers, haunting you in the quiet moments that follow. It's been 8 months since that night, and I barely recognize the man I used to be. The version of me who believed that love could fix anything, who thought loyalty was enough. He's gone. What's left is quieter, more careful, but strangely free. I sold the house 2 months ago. I couldn't stay in those walls any longer. Every room was a ghost. I moved to a smaller apartment across town, close to a park where I run most mornings before work. It's become my therapy, one slow mile at a time. Some mornings, I still catch myself thinking about her, not with longing, but with disbelief. How could someone fabricate life itself just to cover their betrayal? Sometimes people at work mention her name, since the story made rounds online. I don't correct them or share that I was the husband. I just listen quietly. I've learned that peace doesn't always come from setting the record straight. Sometimes it comes from walking away and letting the truth speak for itself. One night, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Sarah. "I'm sorry. I know it's too late, but I wanted you to know I'm getting help." I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. Not out of anger, but because there was nothing left to say. Now when I think about her, I don't see the woman I married. I see a cautionary tale, a reminder that some people would rather destroy something beautiful than admit who they truly are. I don't hate her anymore. I don't need to. She's living in the ruin she built, while I'm finally building something new. If you ask me what revenge really feels like, I'd say this: it's not the exposure, not the humiliation. It's the silence that follows, the kind that tells you she'll never have access to your peace again,